lots of people in the front row tonight. So Marianne, if you look around, maybe they'll sign in. Carol will be signing in, and Patty and Leo will be in the front row, and Angela and Clydette, our favorite Clydette DeGroat, who is a sponsor. The DeGroat Foundation is a sponsor of the Parentis Literary Salons, as is NISCA. So we want to thank our sponsors very much. And we have a secret announcement. I have an announcement. Today is the day that they released the NEA grants for the year. And Parentis, woo, got an NEA grant. We got an NEA grant. This is a big deal. I have a feeling that everything that I said was not heard by anybody because we were not live. So I am going to repeat myself and say hi to Marianne Lonsdale in the front row, and say hi to the other people who are going to be in the front row if they're not there already. If you sign in on YouTube, you can write comments to us. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ridgefield CT Poet Laureate, for congratulating us on our grant. So Marianne's in the front row, and so is Carol and Patty and Leo and Angela and Clydette. And we hope that you all meet each other offline somehow. I don't know how, but you are all fabulous people, and we highly appreciate your support. Again, to NISCA and the DeGroat Foundation, thank you for supporting us. And I'm going to run down a real quick list of people who made donations. It's going to go fast. Joya, Wendy, Nina, Deirdre, Tina, Nicole, Amy, Sandra, Karen, Desiree, Natalie, and Lisa. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
Yay. Hi, Clydette. Thank you. Hi, Sandel. It's good to see you. Hi, Joya. This is fun. I like talking to people who are on the
Hi,
Sandel. Okay. So I don't want to bore everybody with us just saying hi to people. So, hi, Loretta. So, Christina, can you start introducing our readers for us so that we can see them all on the stage, our lovely poets at our annual Winter Poetry Salon?
So every year in January, we have our special poetry salon, and we have a great lineup tonight, and you're in for a treat, because I know most of these people, and I'm amazed by most of these people, because just going from the first, I'll tell you the readers first. J.P. Howard.
Yay! We've had her before. We know she's good.
Natalie O'Reilly, Nathaniel O'Reilly, Nat, and Catherine Woodward. And we set this up about a year ago, and we're really, really happy to see them. JP's been back a couple times, yeah? And I think everyone else is new to Parentis.
You guys are all new, right? Catherine, you haven't read for us, have you? But I feel like I know you from something. Have you attended a salon?
Catherine, she was in another salon, but she had to cancel, and we moved her
That's
here.
why I know your name so well. Okay, good. Well, we're very, very glad to have you. And who are you, Ridgefield CT Poet Laureate? You're saying hi to, look, who is this person? You guys know this person?
I think that's Barb.
Who's that? Who's that saying hi? We say hi right back. I love Jane Otto for thanking our donors on our behalf. Thank you, Jane, for thanking our donors. I love our people.
Whoa.
Okay, so we have some amazing poets that are going to read some amazing poetry. And it's Barb Jennis. Hi, Barb. And so who's reading first, Christina?
We have J.P. Howard reading first. She's a poet, an educator, a literary activist, and a community leader. J.P. is the spring 2023 Tao Mentor in Residence at Brooklyn College.
Yay, she got that like 15 seconds ago. So everybody, round of applause. Yay! Exciting. Yay.
It's always so great to see you adding things to your credentials. It's amazing. So JP's debut poetry collection, Say Mirror, was a Lambda Literary Award finalist. She's the author of Bury Your Love Poems Here, Praise This Complicated Her Story, Legacy, Healing, and Revolutionary Poems. And she co-edited Sinister Wisdom's Black Lesbians. We Are the Revolution. JP was a featured author in Lambda Literary's LGBTQ Writers in Schools program, and has received fellowships from Cave Keenum, Bona.
That's how they say it.
What?
Right?
Cave Keenum.
Yeah.
He curates women writers in Bloom's Poetry Salon, and JP's general poetry editor for both Women's Studies Quarterly, and editor-at-large of Mom Egg Review. Everyone, please welcome JP Howard.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for having me back. So great to be here. Congratulations on the NEA grant. That is fantastic. So excited for Parentis. Y'all are doing it. All right. It's going to be a short, brief reading. My first poem is called How Many Shades of Pink Can I Hold On To? This is a shadow poem of a poem I once wrote about the color pink. What I said in the original poem was all truth. What I said in that old poem was mostly lies. This poem is a flashlight staring down my old poem. Pink was the saddest color of my past. Pink is the brightest color of my future. Mama loved me in all shades of pink: magenta, blush, fuchsia, flamenco, even salmon. She liked when I twirled in pale pink punk shoes. Plie, pirouette, Juliet, Mama said, and I would spin like a little ballerina wind-up doll. Mama mostly loved dolls. She collected vintage miniature baby dolls with matching layette sets, usually in pink. Soft, pale pink, pink so pale it was really white. Some days Mama thought I was her doll. She tied each of my 2 perfectly braided long plaits and pastel pink polka dot velvet bow tie hair bows. I remember now, those were my favorite. This next poem is a poem from my book, Say Mira, and I always try to offer this in almost every reading I do for anyone who's going through a difficult time, or if you know someone who's going through a difficult time. What to say to a friend who wants to give up. Say, I love you, even when you can't love yourself. Say, please, please, not today. Say, too much life unlived. Say, mirror. Say, beautiful. Say, this arm. Take this arm. Say, grab. Say, hold. Say, let tears fall. Say, tears heal. Say, forgive your mama. Say, she did the best she could. Say, tomorrow. Say, sleep. Say, split seconds. Split the seconds. Say, let the seconds turn into days. Say, today. Say, tomorrow. Say, sun. Say, warm. Say, skin. Say, warm skin. Say, sunlight. Say, new day. Say, breathe. Say, inhale. Say, exhale. Say, not today, baby girl. Say, so much life to live. Say, love. Say, I love you. Say, hold on to love. This next poem is called Ethery for Black Women. Black women, we be trying to hold worlds on our backs in our hearts without fail. Some days we fail at perfection. Black girl magic is a mask we pull off when night comes. Alone in our world, weight off our backs, we exhale, a lone heart. We whisper in pillows, wet with our tears, our untold secrets. We breathe without our masks. We sit still in our silence. Some nights we float on crescent moons. Black girl magic shining under stars. We gather our pieces before daylight. And I'm just going to read one final poem. And this is definitely, certainly a mama poem inspired by my 2 sons, who I often write about. And this is called In This House. In this house, we raise our voices. We are raising up Black boys in this house. In this house, some days our voices stay raised high. Other nights we are soft whispers. Black boys are becoming Black men in this house. In this house, Black boys blossom. Black boys bloom. Black boys cry or laugh. Black boys be brilliant in this house. This is a Black boys' house filled with love. We don't let fear enter this house. We know fear intimately, but we don't let it enter these doors. This is a safe house for Black boys becoming Black men. This is a safe house for Black men who were once Black boys. This is our house, and these are our sons. Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you, JP.
Amazing.
And thank you for coming back. That's
Yes,
awesome.
and there were some really nice comments from the audience, just so you know. Like,
Awesome, thank you. And just let them know we can't comment back here, so I wish I could, but thank you everybody for the comments.
We see them. I
That's
promise
right, we see them. Yes, thank you.
This was really nice. Wait.
There were so many beautiful lines. Black girl magic.
So beautiful.
So beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So beautiful. Thank you.
That made me so happy. All these poems make me so, JP, your poetry is full of love. It is full of pain and full of love, but the love is so much bigger that
Good.
it
I'm
just
glad. I'm
is
glad the love
such
shines through. I'm
comfort
glad.
you know, and I mean, you can feel the world in that. You feel all around the edges, like all the, you know, world.
Yes. Yes.
But there's like this beautiful center that is just,
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Actually, I wanted to ask you a little bit about fear. I think fear is one of those things during COVID, right?
Yes.
That has kind of seeped into a lot of people's work. And you know what's interesting is when you talk about a Black boy's house, and you talk about fear and leaving it outside.
Yes.
It's so, you know, it's so interesting that you take something that is in our everyday life that
Right.
is so pervasive, and then you really show it in your poetry and how you deal with it. Because I think not everyone has poetry, and that's what's so beautiful about poetry.
Right.
You feel empowered.
That's right. Exactly. Yes. And a chance to sort of share, that perspective, right? What it is to be a mom, Black mom raising, Black sons in this world, and kind of the love, but also the fear. Many times it kind of all gets mixed up together, right? But
Yeah.
centering, like you said, and then centering it on the love portion as well.
Just curious if your poetry has edged more towards comfort and embracing and healing as the pandemic went from, awful to worse to even worse.
Right. I'm not sure if it's edged towards there, but it's definitely in there. Yeah, it's definitely in there.
Cool. Well, wow. Yay. We'll talk more with you when we
Cool.
talk with everybody.
Sounds
We sure
good.
will.
Who's next, Christina?
So our next reader is Nat O'Reilly. He is an Irish Australian poet, so we're really, really lucky to have him. He's a professor of creative writing at the University of Texas at Arlington. His books include Boulevard, Unbelonging, Blue, Preparations for Departure, Distance, Suburban, Exile, and Systems of Homesickness. His poetry has appeared in journals and anthologies published in 14 countries, including Anthropocene, Beltane, is that correct?
Beltane, yeah.
Beltane magazine, Cordite Poetry Review, The Elevation Review, 4W, Headstuff. In parentheses, New Modernisms, New World Writing, Mascara Literary Review, The Quadratine Review, Skylight 47, Structurus, and Westerly. He's the poetry editor of Antipodes, a global journey of Australian New Zealand literature. So you know whose door to be knocking on if you're a writer out there. Everyone, please welcome Nat.
Yay.
Thanks so much, Christina, and thank you, Milda, and thank you to all the organizers of Parentis and the other readers and the audience members. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm going to read 4 shortish poems tonight. I'm the father of a 16-year-old daughter, Celeste, and so these are all poems kind of for and about her. They're all shortish poems. A couple of them happen to be sonnets. One of them is from my book, Unbelonging. The others are from my forthcoming chapbook called Dear Nostalgia, which will be published in Canada by Above Ground Press. And the first one is called In the Beginning. The OBGYN sliced through your mother's skin, abdominal muscles and uterus, grasped you carefully, lifted you out and into this world, slick, fresh, and glistening. After I cut your umbilical cord, the nurse wrapped you in a soft pink blanket, passed you into my arms, delivered you into my life, joyfully exploded my past and future. While the doctor stitched and repaired your mother's bloody wounds, you gazed into my eyes, your bright blue worlds observing me for a sublime hour. This next one's called Beach Ballet, and this was set in Ireland. In the midst of an Irish heat wave, lying on a longboard in the swale at Lahinch, chatting with a Paul Kelly lookalike between sets, I look over my right shoulder towards the beach and watch a tween girl catch a wave, rise to her feet, balance gracefully, knees bent, arms wide and relaxed, ride all the way to the shallows before stepping lightly off the side of the board into knee-deep foam. The girl's ride is almost complete before I recognize her as my daughter, just 20 minutes into her first lesson, adapting, evolving, becoming herself. Now this one's called Chords and Lyrics. I paused 20,000 Days on Earth at 11:15 as Nick Cave works out chords and lyrics to a new song at the piano in his studio. Walked to the kitchen to refresh my gin and tonic. Notice a strip of golden light and D minor emanating from beneath my daughter's door. I turn the handle, push slowly into the room to find her sitting cross-legged on her bed, auburn hair hanging down, working out chords and lyrics on her grandfather's Gibson, transforming and elevating. And I'm going to finish this one called Supermoon. My daughter takes me outside after dark to observe the strawberry supermoon 3 hot nights after the summer solstice. We hurry to the bottom of our backyard, searching for the best angle, push outdoor furniture aside, stand together barefoot on warm patio bricks beside the barbecue, scan southeast between oak, crepe myrtle, and magnolia until we are awestruck by brightness, have to look away for seconds, drop profanities in amazement, redirect our vision, watch the halo pulse as reflected light mesmerizes, unites us in surprise. Thank you.
Thank you. So your daughter seems to be a topic of a lot of your work, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
And has she read any of your work?
Oh, yeah. She's been to a lot of my poetry readings.
Oh, that's so amazing.
She's been to more of my stuff than my wife has. And she just went on a tour with me to Australia in June, and we did like 6 events in 10 days. And yeah, she's always there. And she actually just started a literary journal at her school. And so she's, been learning a bit from Dad. So it's great to see that. I didn't push her to do it. She just did it on her own. But, she's clearly had that example. Yeah.
Are there poems in the collection that you were like, don't read this one?
No, I don't think so. No, I think she would be quietly pleased at them. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah, she certainly read most of those in readings. Yeah.
Is she a writer?
Yeah. I mean, she started a journal and she's writes poetry, and she writes mostly fiction. She's got creative writing classes at her school, and she's working on a graphic novel. So she's into more other genres than poetry, but she does write poetry. Yeah, and she's had some poems published. Sorry, I've got a cat.
It's okay. It's nice to hear. Nice to see what we're hearing. Yeah.
How about the rest of you? Do you have kids that have started to write or are writing?
I do. My son is a great poet. He's 18 now, but he's actually, we used to do a lot of poetry together, I would say starting when he was 7, which is really great, especially when Black poets speak out, when that began, for unfortunate reasons, because of what was happening to, young Black folks in America. But he started writing then, and so it gave him this powerful voice. And I'm trying to encourage him to, write again. He just graduated from high school.
That's awesome.
My girls are visual artists, so that was their art channels.
You were a journalist too, Catherine. When did you come to poetry?
My answer is Rupert Murdoch made me a poet.
Okay. All right.
Explain.
I know. How so?
I went into online journalism very early. In fact, when I tell my grandchildren that I took the subway to see the World Wide Web, they'll think I went on a dinosaur. But I started with a site that was going to have a big journalism component, and it came after a couple of rounds of layoffs. It became TV Guide Online. So I don't think I would have left a journalism job that I that I was at, but I sure didn't want to work for TV Guide Online for Murda. So my kids were really young, and I thought I'll take a little time and before I go back, and I started writing a children's novel. And I found out I'm a terrible novelist. So I thought that writing poetry would be the furthest thing away from the novel writing. And I just sort of fell into it.
Well, maybe you should try again, because novel writing and children's novel writing are like two separate animals, right, guys? I mean, I tried it. It's so hard. It's so hard. JP's nodding.
Yes, it's hard. Definitely.
How about you, Caitlin?
My daughter she's 13, and I think she's not that into poetry, but she's a very good essay writer so far.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Well, hopefully you passed on your vision, your ability to see the details and see the things,
That's the wonderful thing about poetry. Who
said that? JP said it was like shining a flashlight, right?
Right, shining a flashlight.
All poetry is like that. That's so cool. Who is next? I want to talk to everybody, so I want to.
Well, our next reader is Caitlin Grace McDonald. She was the New York Times Poetry Fellow at NYU, where she received her MFA. She's published poems and essays widely, including a chapbook, Dreaming the Tree, and 2 books of poems, Looking for Small Animals and Pandemic City. She lives and teaches writing in New York City. Everyone, please welcome first-timer Caitlin McDonald. Yay, we're so lucky.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I really loved listening to both the readers who've read already. Congratulations on the NEA. That's fantastic. So I'm just going to read a couple poems from Pandemic City and a new poem or 2. I think
awesome.
So this book I wrote every morning on during lockdown in New York City, and wrote really rapidly. And there's like a lot of different voices coming into it. It just really felt like something really big was happening that I needed to record. And so this first one I'm going to read is called, they all start Pandemic With. It's called Pandemic with Cord. In what could have been the last time I saw my mother, I tripped over a cord running between us. She was watching Call the Midwife on her cell phone on my couch as I dunked my thin, middle-aged girl body in a bath of warm salt water. You're leaving me, she'd said. I'm just taking a bath, I sighed. Renessa Redgrave and a superfluity of nuns shouting out tiny cell speakers from the couch while the phone cord stretched low and tight across my living room to charge. I was naked in a white towel my lover who was leaving me had given me, which fell to the floor when I tripped, and my mother screamed. You pulled my arm. Mother, daughter, cord. My falling hurt her, pulled her dislocated shoulder out, and in that dark she couldn't see me naked on the floor. Love causes pain. My own daughter's head resting on my occipital ridge, she surrenders to sleep, is slowly carving a cave of pain. My mom had that shoulder replaced last week as this virus fills the world like a giant select and delete. My sister's girlfriend, a nurse who cared for my mom after the surgery, has a fever. The kind of decisions we make now, not unlike the ones we make for birth. Packing bags, making playlists in vain. What will happen will happen. The world will go dark before the light. At the end, there will be some green, some breath, a cord to cut. And this one is called Pandemic with Flies and Lies. I don't think I've ever read this one aloud before. I wake to text from N. I have cancer. Trump has COVID and I have cancer. I am speaking, Kamala says firmly when Pence tries to interrupt her from behind his plexiglass with a fly stuck to his head. The school across the street is closed because the Hasidic community in Borough Park refuses to wear masks, torches them in piles, shutting down traffic for their dying idols, their last gasp. I drive to the Bronx for a pap smear, and a man coughs on me on the street. There is opportunity in crisis, says Maya Wiley on the radio. What if we refused, writes MG, to ask for less? Empty office buildings glowing like beehives or Anne Hamilton exhibits, art on wood panels covering shuttered shops. At home, scrolling between articles about death rates and doom, she clicks on an ad for a pink pan with a $30,000 wait list. It is elegant, breast-like, from the past or the future. 32,867 people have died of COVID in New York City. What can that pan do? Today, the president will address the nation from his balcony like cartoons of kings as people gather to die on the South Lawn. You're caught up for now, says her phone screen at the end of the news scroll. Are you called anything other than Caitlin? Texts the new lover who brings her flowers, slowly tells the story behind her scars. Sends a letter from the future about repair for the pan-sized hole in her heart. People are no longer clapping from balconies. They are taking to the streets, protesting on the red steps of Times Square, biking from Columbus Circle on Indigenous Peoples Day, marching over bridges, chanting "Say Her Name." Facebook tells her 4 years ago she dreamed of holding a door shut against a president who could come through the walls. Mama, Miyama, child, Katie, Miss Grace, the goat are what I'm called. Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, 26 days, winter is coming. They're putting things in jars. One door will shut. Keep watching the open windows. And let's see, a new poem, or a newer poem. This is called The Egg. My daughter threw away a dollar bill. I don't know if that's illegal, she said, but I didn't want it. A man on the street had shoved it into her hand, said, "You're cute." When an egg rots, the skin around the shell tightens, the yellow darkens. The scent may make you never want to eat again or drink in the scent of others. In the third trimester, I knew she was too big for me to push out. I could feel it. She was going to crack me open. When I was pushing, my midwife said, she might be a conehead, but then I breathed everything out and tore from my urethra to anus in one heave. Big, perfect, meaty feet, nothing bird-like, not like me, someone new in the room. For a few years after, I felt my sex was all wound, all something broken, stitched, the scent of pain. I don't remember when this shifted. It's not new again, I feel, but something textured and whole in its own slanted light. I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. That was beautiful.
Great. Beautiful.
You know, I love in Pandemic City how you capture the chaos, just the total chaos. I don't think outside of New York people experienced it the way we did, but there was so much chaos, and the fact that you were able to write so much is incredible. Because with the kid at home and Zooming and all that stuff, how did you handle that?
It was like for one thing, I think I'm one of those people who kind of does well in crisis, but also it was like a ritual, and it grounded me. And I also wrote with other people, some of whom are here tonight. We often write together and Zoom write together or write on shared documents. And so that, in the kind of isolation I was feeling, was keeping me going.
It's so nice to have a writers community that's, and to have them be so immediate during pandemic because of Zoom. That's really interesting. Hi, Joe Kennedy. So yeah, I one thing that I am super loving that does not happen in fiction readings nearly enough. I am super loving all of your fans just rewriting all of their favorite lines. Is this common in Zoom poetry readings that they just excerpt like your poetry and repeat it to keep it fresh forever? I love it.
It
It
is
is.
common in our Zoom workshops. Yeah.
Yeah, my salon too. My salons, the ones that were on Zoom, goes on Zoom for the last,
They do
almost 3
this?
years.
It's so
Yes,
great.
it's
'Cause
like
I
a
know
great way.
live,
It's
that's
a
there's
great
a
way
lot
to
of like
support.
clap.
It's a
Live,
great way
there's a
to
lot of
support.
clapping
Right,
and
it's like that
snapping or
exactly.
responses,
Except that you get a chance to just say it.
it's
Yeah, it's
so
like I hear
great.
you. Yeah.
I hear you. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We
It's so
encourage people to do it in our salons.
I think it's fantastic. I think fiction writers should do it too.
Yeah,
Everybody
we
should do
definitely
it.
should.
Right.
Just repeat stuff. Like, and we should do it to politicians too. Like, here's your dumb line that you just said. But good ones too. Like all the things that need to be remembered can just be like.
Well, what I love about it is
Great.
sometimes when you meet someone, like you meet so many people, you can't remember their name, but you can remember that line.
Oh yeah, totally.
Right? Like you remember that line and you're like, and you
You're
can
like, oh,
say
you
to
wrote
them,
that poem about yeah.
and that's I think that's so wonderful about poetry because you have to make everything so tight.
Right.
And so those lines really like come out and they really stick with you, Beautiful. Thank you. So our final reader. Our final reader is Catherine Woodard, and she's the author of Opening the Mouth of the Dead, a story of poems published by Lone Goose Press in 2 editions, paperback and limited edition. She helped return poetry in motion to New York City. Yes!
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. We love it.
She's on the board of the Poetry Society of America. Her poems have appeared in literary journals, anthologies, and CNN Online. She swerved to poetry in 2001 after an award-winning career in journalism. She also is a phenomenal storyteller. So if you're looking for a storyteller, she is incredible. Everyone, please welcome Catherine Woodard.
Yay.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank Parentis for championing writers and parents. I'm very fond of both of them. So you really have inspired work. So I'm going to read from Stronger Than Fear, which is an anthology that came out in 2022 by Cave Moon Press that I think speaks to the anxiety of these times. And it was first published on CNN Online on the 150th anniversary of Gettysburg. A former editor of mine was the editor of Opinion, and I made a pitch to him, like, poems can be opinion too. And he said, so send me one when you think it's timely. So he not only published 2 of them, I got paid, which is a big deal.
Yay.
Yeah.
So Gettysburg. General Daniel Sickles takes his amputated leg home in a barrel of whiskey, takes credit for the Union victory when Lincoln visits 3 days later. Representative Sickles, Democrat in New York, works the missing leg more skillfully than the one attached, nominates himself for a Medal of Honor hitched to a bill to hallow Gettysburg, where he sent 10,000 New York boys against orders down from Cemetery Ridge to a peach orchard to slaughter by the Rebs. On the 150th anniversary of the battle, 2 sweaty brothers squirm in midday sun on Little Round Top. Oblivious to parents, tour guide, they wear blue Union caps, struggle to attach plywood bayonets to replica rifles. So I'm going to close with the first and last poem of Opening the Mouth of the Dead by Lone Goose Press. I was so lucky to work with a book art publisher and get to be able to work visually on the book art. 1 page of it's behind me. And she published all the poems in the paperback as well, too. For Opening the Mouth of the Dead. My brother wants to make fire when I reveal the spell for opening the mouth of a mummy. If it breathes air, we breathe air. We creep into the bedroom. I am Pocahontas in a too small shift. Luke insists on Spider-Man, ignores pictures that show Egyptians more like Indians than superheroes. The Piggly Wiggly had no incense, so we offer moon pies, 2 candles that smell like hush puppies, to the wobbly TV tray beside our father's bed. If he lives, we will live. To eat again, breathe again, think again, see. So my last poem is the last poem of the book. Unanswered note. His suicide note, like him sober, says little. Will stay folded, I presume, in the dresser mother keeps bank papers and report cards. But the other note, sent freshman year, hasn't found its place. Parachutes between sweaters. Pauses between sweaters, parachutes from overdue books. His words flicker. So proud, so sorry I've not, so bright you're. If I could look words in the eye, smell their breath, must a word slurred be tainted, or is my doubt the shame? A letter never answered but still read. Capital B, sturdy, mark of his name. I crawl into the bottom loop, think of the word bridge. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you for
your-
sharing this.
Your second poem really is so personal, and the first poem is almost like historical poetry. Is that even a thing? But like with the whole theme of Gettysburg and everything. So how do you thematically have your work tie together?
I guess so. The book Opening the Mouth of the Dead is a story in poems. I guess I still had that itch. I needed to tell a story. So it's sort of its own thing. And so then my other poems are about very different things. One of the things I'm trying to do now is anything I covered as a journalist, I can't write a poem about it. It's just terrible. It switches on that part of my brain. So I thought, what if I take something that I never reported on that I'm really interested in, do the research as you might as a reporter. So I chose neuroscience, which is really fun. There's a lot of metaphor there. So yes, I'm just on the hunt for anything that might make a good poem.
That's great. Do you consider the metaphors? What is it that gets you? Or is it just
I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I'm sure probably other people in the panel, when you feel that you have a really good metaphor, you want to jump up and down and clap, because it's, for me at least, it's really satisfying to be able to make those connections.
Let's hear from them. How about Caitlin? How about you? Or Nat?
Yeah, I feel like my brain thinks associatively, so I'm like always making metaphors. I have to like slow it down sometimes.
Okay.
Some are better than others, but
I'm a little bit the opposite. Like, I'm very detail oriented and observational, and I'll tend to like write down all the details of the subject matter I want to write about. And the first draft might not have any metaphors or similes. And then I have to kind of figure out a way to put them in there. And, the thing I tell my students is, this is how we explain things when we're trying to teach, right? It's like if your student's not understanding a concept the first time, say, well, it's like X or it's like Y. We're always making comparisons, and it's the comparison that clarifies. So then I try and figure out how to make a comparison that kind of combines, say, concrete and abstract, and make something a little strange. And, like Dickinson with hope is the thing with feathers, right? Like that idea of putting the idea together with the specific thing. So I actually have to kind of work at it. It's not the thing that comes naturally to me.
How about you, JP?
Yeah, I'm probably similar to Nat. Probably have to work at it. But like Catherine said, when you do get a metaphor that really fits or works, it's like you get so excited. It's like, okay, this really works here. But I don't know that it comes to me like naturally, automatically. Yeah, but definitely it is exciting when you find something that really works.
Yeah.
Are you guys all working on collections beginning from the collection, like from the structure? Like I have, it's like you were just saying that you had this whole narrative that you were writing in poetry in small poems, right? So most of you, do you work from like the greater subject matter and then compile enough poems to fill a chapbook, or do you tend to work the opposite way, where you just write one small thing at a time and then try to see how they all fit together in a collection? Because you've all got collections.
I'm not going to answer that. I think it depends on what I'm working on. I have like a few different things I'm working. So one is a poetry manuscript, and that one I don't think I necessarily started out with a theme, even though a lot of my poems have turned out to be sort of very, very political poems. But then there's another one which is definitely more driven by the narrative and storyline. I'm working on a middle school novel in verse. So basically, it's like a book with with poetry for middle schoolers. And so that one I already sort of have the idea of sort of the characters and who I'm writing about in each poem, maybe in a different voice, a different narrative. And that's like something very different for me, but also very exciting. So that one definitely has clear themes.
It's like intellectualizing it in a way instead of just like pouring it out.
Right. Yes.
Cool.
How many characters are you juggling with in that book?
It's not too many right now. There's like a one primary, a young girl who's middle school age, her mom, her grandmom, some of her teachers. So those are sort of like the main ones, the main voices.
Cool. Is it all women? Is it only women?
It is primarily women. Yeah.
With like we were talking about before about either picture books or middle grade books, they can be so tough to write. Like you think they sound easy, right? Like anyone can be a children's book writer, but I think there's a little bit of that with poetry sometimes too, which is boggling to me because I feel so intimidated by poetry a lot of the time. What is the process? What's the secret stuff behind the screens? Do you know what I mean? That laymen like me who don't really understand poetry, what would you tell people like me?
Read poetry.
Yeah.
Well, I would
read
actually
100 poems for every poem you try and write.
Oh, that's good.
That's really good advice.
It's like why would you say try and learn a song on a guitar if you hadn't listened to hundreds of songs, right? It's like it's weird to me that people think, oh, I can just pick up a pen and write a poem because they can write. I wouldn't say, well, I can just build a beautiful bookcase because I know how to hold a hammer. Right. It's like there's a huge gulf there in terms of like skill and practice and technique and learning. So I really always emphasize that with my students, like it's a craft and it's I think it was an apprenticeship, like you're going to become an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter. This is going to take you years before you can write the first good poem. But there's often a misconception that, well, I've got these strong feelings and I've got the bravery to put those words on the page, therefore I've written a poem. And it's like, no, the poem, spilling your guts on a page does not make poetry, right? There's so much more to it. So, it's the craft and the technique and the learning. And so much of that, you can't cheat on that. It just takes years and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of failure before you learn those skills and get good at it.
I'll agree with that. How about anyone else? JP?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, like you said, it definitely takes, practice and skills and reading poems. I love that. I think that's like really great advice to give other folks. Read poems, listen to poems. I know in my MFA program, I had a professor, David Groff, and I was someone who always, was into reading it. And he would have this thing where we had to, listen to the poems. We couldn't cheat and read it. You have to listen to it and discuss the poem only after hearing it. And I really appreciate that too as well. So I would say also, sort of go to, poetry readings and just get that appreciation for hearing the poems as well.
Yeah, really listening, right? Like hearing the way it's put together.
Absolutely. And that really gives you ideas. I think I get a lot of creative ideas just from going or coming to, readings like this and hearing other, peers of mine, how you write down lines and something really inspires you. So I love that idea too. I think with poetry, how we can get inspired by each other. I know I certainly do.
Yeah.
Another thing I like about the just writing lines that strike you in the chat is that I think people who don't read a lot of poetry and don't go to a lot of readings feel anxiety at poetry readings because they think I'm missing things, like I'm not hearing it all, and so I'm not understanding it all, and you don't. It's not like you hear every note in music. It's okay if you miss things. It's some of it's gonna like land with you, and you'll reread it, and like a certain image will stay with you, or a certain line will stay with you, and it's okay if you don't hear it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, they use that wonderful word resonance, which works for music and poetry, right? It just resonates with you. Like,
That's
so
right.
A mentor of mine, Marie Ponceau, who I love her work, I recommend. She won the Frost Medal from the Poetry Society, and her lecture there, which you can find on their site, is talking about how we look at an infant when they start making sounds, or a baby, and that it's a kind of poetry, and it's very rhythmic, and it's also very connected, because the first time the child and the parent recognize, or speaking in whatever language you are, that's just such a powerful connection. So she talks about a baby's sounds are poetry.
Well, what I love about readings, and in particular of poetry, is the sound. Like that, sometimes the poem is so different when you hear it, and especially the rhythm and the way the author reads it. It can change the whole poem for me.
Yes, no, same here. Sometimes you'll read something and then you'll hear someone read it, and it's like it's a whole different piece, because depending on the tones, depending on the presentation of it, it really sort of almost like it brings it to life, right? That's sort of the beauty of reading something on the page, but then also hearing it, on the stage, or in a space like this.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. I want to make sure that the audience knows that you guys can type in questions, and if you do that, we will ask them of the panel. So feel free to just start typing. In the meantime, I would like to know can you remember a time in which you were doing a poem and the fact that you had a child somehow either helped the poem or hindered the poem or somehow affected you while you were in composition? JP, you're nodding. So.
Yeah, I always remember this. Our son was like a toddler, and it was this the final performance. I'm a Cave Canem, fellow. So this is at a Cave Canem after a workshop with Patricia Smith. Patricia Smith was our workshop leader. Wow. And this was like the final, the finale where everyone gets up, and it was my turn to get up. And my wife was holding my son, and he was I just remember he was like screaming and crying. He was a toddler.
No.
So I'll always remember that. Patricia Smith is like, what's happening over there? So my wife had to basically go into the hallway and keep them. But I'll always, we all know, being, parents, right? We've all had different experiences, but I definitely remember that.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So yeah, well, does anyone else want to mention anything? Because what I want to ask was, when you have kids and they inform your work, right? What is that line sometimes that you feel like it's safe for them, and you can write about it and keep it your story versus their story, or whatever? Do you or is this even an issue with you guys?
Yeah, Nat, you're writing a lot about your daughter. When she's 16, so are you afraid that at some point she's going to be like, Dad, my story, not your story?
No, I'm not afraid of it. But I definitely will say, hey, I've written this poem and I'm going to send it out. And, what do you think? Is this okay? It's like I wouldn't want to put something on a page that other people would read that she would think was too personal, like I was revealing something about her that she didn't want revealed, that was private or whatever. It's definitely aware that, I'm writing about somebody else here. It's like, and often I'm writing about our relationship. So it's, it's clear that it's my perspective, my take on the relationship. I'm not trying to speak for her. But yeah, definitely conscious of that. It's not just about me, right? But I think that's one of the things you become very conscious of as soon as you become a parent, right? It's not just about me anymore. It's like all of a sudden your world just turns upside down, and it's all about the kid or the kids. And it's a whole different perspective shift. And kind of selfishly, like one of the wonderful things about becoming a parent was I suddenly had a whole new subject matter. I've got new things to write about now. A whole new world had opened up.
I totally thought you were going to say that this is what happened when you became a poet. That like all of a sudden it's not about me anymore. It's about the greater world. Pulling things together.
Yeah.
So it's the beginning of the year. How are you projecting this year to be like? Are you working on a project this year? Are you working on separate poems? Are you working on other projects? What do you have going for yourself since this is the beginning of the year? Caitlin?
I haven't, it hasn't really, the shift into 2023 hasn't really shifted what I'm working on. And I'm at a point where I need to, like, someone asked a little earlier, one of you asked about whether we write with like a theme in mind or a narrative in mind, and I've been for a while just writing poem by poem by poem by poem and not compiling or looking at how they all go together. So that's what's got to come next. I have to carve out some time and mental space to do that. Maybe it's gonna not be till the summer, but.
You mean you'll lay everything out and look at what you have, and then that's so interesting.
Are you able? Wait, how old is your daughter?
She's 13. Yeah. So
are you able to have that space where you can like put things out, like physically? I mean, like that's like a lot.
I probably could. We have a long haul. My printer's broken at the moment, so it's not happening anytime soon. But yeah, everything is in this computer right now. But yeah, I mean, she's like, am I in there? And I'm like, yep. And she's like, is it mean? I'm like, nope. That's all she wants.
So cute. So it's okay then.
Good.
It's okay.
Are you
then.
guys all longhand or typists? Do you write your poems longhand or do you type to start?
I usually start longhand, but not all.
I do a lot of typing. Because sometimes I'll use my phone, like whatever's there, type it in my notes,
Yeah.
How about you?
Pencils or
I was going to say, sorry. Damn the internet. I don't really have problems with it completely. That's why I came off and came back. So I do start on pencil a lot. I always edit on paper. I do a lot of work on the computer. But in talking about your children, and my book is written from the third grade narrator. I sort of had to do it in reverse. I was looking for keeping it in that voice of a third grader, which was fun.
Yeah, that's fun to play with. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Okay. So, Nat, what is your project this year?
I'm in a kind of weird place because just over the last couple of months, I had 3 really big projects that were all multi-year projects, like all kind of get to the finishing stage, and they've got contracts and they're going to come out over the next like 2 years. So it's kind of this big culmination. So I'm kind of back to square one in a good way. Like I don't have to get anything written quickly, and I don't have to have anything like accepted for publication this year in terms of a book, because I've already got stuff coming out this year, next year, in terms of like my kind of professional work life as a professor. So it's nice not to have that stress. I can just kind of see what happens and just see what comes to me, and maybe it'll be something totally new and something totally different.
So exciting.
Yeah, thanks. And the idea we were talking about before with Caitlin was mentioning about usually just kind of pulling things together afterwards. That's 8 out of 11 collections for me worked like that. It's like I would just kind of get to a point where I've got 50 or 60 poems, and let's look at them and see, is there a common theme here, and how can I create a narrative arc and all that kind of stuff. And it was always there. There was always like a theme already. And then there were 3 of them where I wrote them with a very specific project in mind and a specific structure and all of that. And so I've kind of done it both ways, and now I'm just kind of sit back and wait, see what happens.
That's so
yeah.
I love the idea of having the mental space to be able to just see what happens, you know, to not have to, I have to publish or I have to send this out. And I'm actually curious. So, and again, it's sort of this like single poem versus a collection poem. So you, those of you that already have collections, I think you all already have collections. Does it make you want to write another collection, or do you still want to send out poems to get that immediate gratification of like, you know, I mean, it probably takes just as long for a poem to go out. When you send a poem to a literary magazine, when you send anything to a literary magazine, it's like a black hole for 8 weeks to 4 years, you know, if the literary magazine makes it. And so I'm just wondering, like, if it is sort of easier as a poet to send out to a literary magazine, or like more gratifying to send it out to a literary magazine and do the wait, or is it sort of to collect them all and have them be yours and then send out the chapbook or the collection as a whole? How do you prefer? And I know it's a preference, so how do you
Publishers really like to see that poems have been published before, so it's a plus if they're published other places.
I think that's true with short stories too, right? So.
I feel like 80% of the poems in my books were published first, you know, individually in journals and anthologies. And I've got one book coming out next year where it's a weird project. It's like a rewriting of Joyce's Ulysses as poems. And
fun.
Yeah, that
because it wasn't poetry when the first one.
Oh, it already was. Yeah, I just kind of remixed some of it, but you know, like that wasn't written as individual poems. It was just like, this is a book length project, but that's a total exception. It's like I'm just always writing individual poems and I'm sending them out, and some of those are already, I know, are going to be part of a collection. Others, it's just, well, putting them to the side and then later on seeing, can I pull them together and which ones kind of fit together. But you know, I send work out like every single week. Like it's just, I have a schedule, I have a ritual, and like they've got to be out there because, you know, I've got some submissions out there that are more than a year old, still waiting to hear back, and others you hear back in a couple of weeks. And, you know, I always tell my students, like, you're not going to get anything published if it just sits on your hard drive. Like it's got to be out there. You've got to give it a chance or multiple chances. So it's just a constant process. And you've got poems in all different parts of the process at each time.
Do you all have favorite publications that you read or that you enjoy seeing your own work in that you submit to frequently? Or do you try to get published in as many different markets as possible? What do you each do? I'm quite curious. Let's start with Catherine. When you send out your stuff, do you know, like, oh, these are my editors and they know me and I love them? Or is it more like, oh, I haven't ever been published in here, let me try there?
I really enjoy being published in different places. So I would think that it's just send it out there and see where it sticks.
What about you, JP? What do you
I would say similar to what Kat said. You know, just I think it's great to be published in a diversity of places. You know, I'm sure everybody has their, you know, sort of top, you know, dream, you know, places, journals. But outside of that, I think like being published in a diversity of different, you know, places is really great as well. You know, and that's probably what would drive me when I'm making submissions.
Do you function the same way, Caitlin?
Yeah, I have friends that are better than me at finding out about all the different publications, and they help me. Because otherwise I'd just be like, the New Yorker, once a year I'll try them again.
I love it. And Nat, do you have your special places?
A bit of both. I mean, you know, I'm heavily involved in the Australian poetry community because, you know, I grew up there and I'm the editor for the Australian Journal, and also in the Irish community. I spent a lot of time in Ireland, and I've been published in probably 20 different journals in Ireland. So there were definitely times where it's like I'm targeting like Australian journals or Irish journals, and I'm also targeting American journals because I work here, and, you know, for professional reasons, like in terms of promotions at work and stuff, some of my colleagues want to see me get published in certain places, right? Or at least places they've heard of.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a better place. It's just something that they've heard of. So there's always a bit of a rub of like, there might be a really cool publication. I really like the kind of more alternative underground stuff, but, you know, that's not going to get me promotion at work, right? So it's like kind of balancing those things. So pretty broad for the most part, but with specific journals also targeted.
So
Well,
we have a great question from the audience. Do you mind if I take it, Christina?
Yes, I'm good.
Joe
I have a
Kennedy?
question after.
Okay, so Joe Kennedy wants to know, do all of you poets remember the first poem that was accepted or published? Can you tell the story of your first publication, your first published poem?
I can.
Go ahead. Go ahead, you start.
No, Caitlin, go ahead. I've been talking a lot.
Well, I just remembered, actually, I don't remember what the publication was, but I remember that that I did like a creative writing week in Denver, Colorado for like troubled teens.
Oh, wow.
And
It changed your
Joy-
life, apparently.
it did. And the poet Joy Harjo came and worked with
wow.
us.
Okay, great.
And she had us, like, she had brought a bunch of natural objects for us to relate to and write from. And she handed me a stone, and I wrote this poem, Snowstone, and it was published somewhere, but I don't remember where. Like, maybe it was just like the publication for the thing I did.
That's so neat.
I had some poems published as an undergraduate in Australia in like the student newspaper, but I was too gutless to use my own name. They were under a pseudonym. And I didn't like send out poems again until I was in my early 30s for lots of reasons. And when I did, I found a list somewhere. I don't know where it was, because this is way before like Submittable and Duotrope and places like that. But I found this list of places that are open, and I had a poem accepted by a publication called the Oklahoma Review. And I'm not sure if it still exists. I think it was published by a small university in Oklahoma called Cameron University.
Yeah, I've been published by them.
Beyond, and I still remember the poem, and it's in my first chapbook, and I know exactly who it's about. I'm not going to say it in public, but yeah, like it was a big kind of moment, and it was like, oh, maybe I can do this again. Like maybe I don't suck, you know. Like it was a big pat on the back that meant a lot, even though there was $0 in it.
Oh, what was your first published poem?
I was so thrilled.
Oh, go ahead, Catherine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was Poet Lore, which is one of the older publications. And it was a book. I stepped up to see if I could see which poem, because I don't remember. It was one from the manuscript. I was so excited that I instantly wrote an email to the editor, me back. And so like as soon as I knew that was this whole, and which brings up also, everyone who's editing journals, people who are doing like pen parentis, it is such work that all writers and all readers should really appreciate, because there's a lot of time and not a lot of bucks, but it's done from the heart. So I'm very appreciative for that community.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's so true. JP, how about you?
Let's see. I don't remember the name of the poem, but it was a small journal. It was actually in like San Francisco, where I had done like some, internships, like right after college. And I remember they accepted it, and I was, super, super excited. It was like a Black lesbian journal, and I had, sort of just come out, when I was in college.
Like, go
so it was
power!
That's right, exactly. So it was one of those kind of poems, but it was, it was exciting. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. I could keep doing this.
So now I'm so intrigued by all four of you did not know, like, oh, this is absolutely like the best, like most earth-shattering moment. Now I'm a poet. So tell me about when you first knew that you were a poet. Like when did you start? Like, because I'm telling you, like, imposter syndrome is the biggest thing in our industry. It is like the thing holding back more people than anything else. I mean, that musical, what is it, A Strange Loop? It's like all about imposter syndrome. It's a whole musical about I can't write because I have imposter syndrome. And he's Time Man of the Year now. What do you know? So it's a pretty good musical too. Anyway, so tell us about when you knew sort of for sure that you were a poet. You can tell about when you suspected it and when you knew for sure. Like, what was a thing that made you go, okay, I embrace this. Like, I'm a poet.
I think there's two different ways, though, of answering the question, because it depends on how you define a poet, right? Okay. Because the way I grew up in Australia, my grandfather's Irish, and he introduced me to Yeats and Heaney and all that. And like, for me, a poet was someone like a prophet, like someone like was on this level that I could never even aspire to. Like to call myself a poet, I wouldn't have dreamed of it. so it was like I was somebody who wrote poetry starting at about 13 or 14, and I knew at that age that this is what I want to do. I want to write poetry. I'm always going to write poetry. By the time I was an undergrad, I was like, yeah, I want to keep writing poetry, but I could never make a living at it. Like it will never be my career. And then in terms of thinking of myself as actually a poet and telling other people I'm a poet, it wasn't until I was in my 30s and I got a big grant from the Australia Council for the Arts. It's a little bit like getting an NEA grant or NEH grant. And that was like, oh, now like I'm legit. Like, you know, like somebody else has like said I'm good enough. But for a long time it was just like, no, don't dare think of yourself that way. You know, it's you're getting too big for your boots, or, you know, there's always, like saying, imposter syndrome or self-doubt or reasons to not believe that you're good enough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I considered myself a poet with my poetry friends, but I would use writer when asked. And then I'd had lunch with a friend. We were like, we're going to say poet. And so I went that afternoon and used that on a visa application to China, which was absolutely the worst thing, because they take poets really seriously. It caused some problems, but I got there.
Wow.
Honestly, I would say when I felt like I could be a poet because I fell in love with poetry. I loved libraries. I was one of those kids who spent a lot of time in libraries. You know, after school, my mom, you know, worked, and so it was almost like the library was my babysitter. I would go straight there after school, and they had a section. This is in Harlem. It's called the Hamilton Grange Library, where I grew up. And it was sort of the Black poet sections, what they called it, you know, sort of back then. And I just remember like just falling in love. You know, I've written poems about this, you know, about reading these poems, and sometimes, you know, reading under my breath the curse words the poets would say, you know, in a little corner in the library, right? And just sort of feeling all the emotions that they felt, like, wow, you can really do all this with words. So I definitely knew that. And then my mom, I was very, very shy as a kid. And so my mom always encouraged me to like recite poetry. And so very early on, I fell in love with this poet, Margaret Walker, and her poem is called For My People, which is a very famous African-American poem. And I used to memorize this. I was like 11 years old, and every Sunday to the church, like elders, you know, the elder women, I would read it. And every week my mother would just clap and make it like it was the biggest thing. You would think I was reading a new poem each week.
That's so nice.
It was a very,
Mom.
right.
That was what somebody in the comments actually said that was one of the ways to become a poet, is to memorize poetry and like get it in your.
I guess, okay. Yeah, but I would memorize it. And the thing is, because I was so shy, this really gave me the confidence, because, you know, I would hear this applause and everybody would encourage me. So I almost forgot that I was, you know, scared to read, you know, to recite the poem, because I was so into it. So I really feel like, you know, my mom encouraging me was a really, really big part of it. And then, you know, later on in life, I finally went to get my MFA, and that really, like, okay, this is it. This is definitely for me.
This piece of paper.
Right. But I had a lot of things that happened in between that, went to law school and all these other things, but it was really something that was always a part of me.
That's super cool. Caitlin, you're last.
I still get imposter syndrome sometimes. But yeah, I mean, in grad school, William Matthews said, the word poet is like the word angel, and angels don't do anything. They just hover there. But I do think that thing I did when I was a teenager actually did kind of change my life. The poet Clarence Major was also there, and he really like believed in me and invited me to take his class at the university, which I think probably kept me from dropping out of high school, and got me like steered me. So that was probably it. But yeah, I mean, it's not, I don't make money from poetry really still. So it still feels funny sometimes, you know.
Nicole out in the audience said, shout out to troubled teens. So
Yeah.
we all have our people.
I have one in the other room.
I have one final question before we close this up. Nat had talked about the publishing process, and I think that because it's the beginning of the year, it's really important to talk about this, because I think a lot of writers or poets, fiction writers, they send things out maybe to a place, and if it gets rejected, they don't send it out somewhere else. But it, like getting published is a process. Can you talk about that and how you deal with it? Nat, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, my rule, and I always tell my students this: as soon as you get a rejection, the same day, send that work somewhere else, right? Like, just turn around and send it straight back out again, right? It's okay to feel bad and feel sad and be pissed off for a day or two or however long it takes. Like, it's okay to have emotions about it, but you don't give up on your work, right? Like, send it out, give it another chance. And like, the acceptance rates are so low and it's so competitive. You never get published if you just send one poem at a time and just, give up on it after one rejection, right? So it's like, oh, there are plenty of poems that, they were rejected 4 or 5 or 6 times before they got accepted. And that's just the process. You just have to keep doing it. And like, as a poetry editor myself, like, I know what it's like on the other side. It's like, I edited one particular issue where we had 2,000 poems submitted to us and we had space to publish 30, right? And so the odds are just abysmal. And it was all done blind. And so then when we see the names afterwards, this is from Australian Journal, we're like, we rejected this person. People we just love and admire, and people who are friends and all of that. But it's just like, the poem has to just grab you so hard on the first reading because you're sitting there reading through hundreds, if not sometimes thousands. So you just got to understand that it's a tough game, and that it's, when you get a rejection, it's not personal. And very often when an editor says something like, it wasn't a good fit, please send me some more work, they actually mean it. It's like, it's true. Sometimes it's just literally, I've got this issue and it's like, well, I've already got X number of poems, by say white guys. I don't need another poem by a white guy. I don't have room for that. I'm trying to create a diverse issue here. So it's not the poem wasn't good. It was just that we're full up on that particular kind of poem or that particular poet. The journal I edit, we only publish 12 poems per issue, 1 per poet, right? And so it's like, yeah, send me some more. Maybe next time we'll have more space. And it's just, there's so many things as the person sending the work in, you don't have control over, you don't know what's going on. You just have to send your work out, and you're not going to do yourself any favors by sitting around trying to figure out, and with some magic ball, right, like why it didn't get chosen or what was wrong with it. And unfortunately, on the editor side, we just don't have the time to give you specific feedback and say it was this particular line break that sucked. We don't have time for that. It's just no or yes. And so you just got to develop tough skin and just keep sending it out. Persistence really pays off. I went from having 0 poems published at one point to now having hundreds of poems published, right? But how do I get there? One at a time, right? So just keep at it, keep being persistent.
It's such a positive
That's
thing.
great.
Joe Kennedy said he's received rejections for fiction that were nicer than the
Acceptances, right? Yeah.
I have 2, where it's just like the glowing review of your rejected story that they can't miss. So, anyone else want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. I mean, sometimes it's hard to pick yourself up that quickly, but I don't know if I can do it.
I want to take Nat's class.
Right, exactly. Right. I aspire to take it, like that. But it is good advice. It may take me a little bit longer to, get myself to, resubmit it, but I do definitely think that's wonderful advice. And I definitely give that advice to others.
It comes down to resilience, right?
Right. So. Resilience. That's right. Exactly. Try again. Though I understand, I'm certainly, mindful that it may not always be that easy just to pick up and, do it every day. But do it when you can. And don't be so hard on yourself if you don't, too. That's the other thing as well, right? Don't beat yourself up.
Sure. You've been very quiet,
Kathleen. I think your advice, I think the advice about having a ritual and doing it is probably really important. Have I done that? No, but I think it's really a
2023. Maybe it's
very smart thing to do.
Goals. We can have goals.
Yeah. Listen, you guys, this has been an amazing, amazing conversation, and I feel like we could go on all night, but we are over time. I want to thank NISCA, and I want to thank the DeGroat Foundation again. Any of you who are writers who are writing something, go and apply for the DeGroat Foundation's Courage to Write grants. They are open right now. They give $7,000 to 7 different writers, plus they have a whole bunch of $1,500 runner-up prizes. And this year, for the first time, they have something called the Lando Grant, which is for anybody writing about immigrant issues or refugee issues or anything like that, or from that perspective, or is that kind of person. So definitely apply for these grants. They're out there. I think Sustainable Arts is open next month. Sustainable Arts gives $5,000, I believe, $25,000 grants to writers that have kids. They also do visual artists, but they have different categories. I don't know what's up this year. But you guys, it has been a pleasure hosting you. And you audience people have been amazing. I love you for copying all these words down. I love you for saying thank you for the event. I especially love my front row, Marianne, Carol, Patty, Leo, Angela, and Clydette. Thank you for sitting in the front row.
Thank
We see
you.
you and we love you.
Thank you.
Everybody have
Thank
a
you, everybody.
great night.